The community center always felt colder on Tuesdays, even in spring. The cafeteria buzzed with fluorescent light and the hum of old vending machines, trying their best to mask the silence that filled the space between conversations. Most of the volunteers were bustling around with trays and cheerful banter, but in the far corner, near the Ethernet cabinet behind the kitchen hallway, a boy sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes locked on a blinking green light. Gabriel Kim was 9. He barely spoke, never smiled, and always wore the same grey hoodie, sleeves slightly too long, covering hands that seemed to be doing something even when still. His presence was easy to miss, and most days, it was, "Hey, you're not supposed to be near that box," snapped a staffer with a stained apron and tired eyes. "You wanna fry the whole system." The boy didn't flinch. He simply looked up, calm, unreadable. That unnerved people more than defiance. Before the reprimand could escalate, a quiet voice intervened. "He's not touching it," said Maye Musk, setting down a tray of bananas and peanut butter crackers. "He's just sitting." The staffer paused, then shrugged and walked off without apology. Maye waited, watching Gabriel without crowding him. She'd learned that from decades in rooms full of wounded egos and guarded hearts, you don't enter until you're invited. "You like computers?" she asked gently. Gabriel didn't nod or speak. He only stared at the wall. "Me too," Maye continued, crouching beside him. "Though I usually lose to them." Still no reply. Maye rose, dusted off her knees, and began to walk away. 3 steps later, she heard movement. Turning slightly, she saw him standing now, reaching into the front pocket of his hoodie. He held out a crumpled piece of paper. She took it. The handwriting was small and tight, printed in black ink from a school pen. Only one sentence: "They're extracting our brains, piece by piece." Maye blinked. She looked up. His face was unreadable, serious in the way only children who've seen too much can be. She crouched again. "Who's doing this?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. Just turned and walked away, heading back to the sleeping quarters near the west wing, feet silent against the floor. Maye stood there for a long moment, reading the sentence again. Something about the wording struck her. Not dramatic. Not childish. Clinical, almost. Extracting. Piece by piece. She turned the paper over. Blank. But the edges were folded, worn at the creases. He'd carried this note for a while. She tucked it into her jacket pocket, the silence of the hallway pressing in again. Maybe it was nothing. A fragment from a dream, or the product of a scared child trying to make sense of a confusing world. But as she walked back into the cafeteria, as the clatter of trays and laughter resumed around her, something in her chest tightened. Maye Musk had seen a lot in 6 to 9 years. Models with fake smiles. Doctors with cold eyes. Systems that promised safety but delivered control. But what she saw in Gabriel Kim's face wasn't fear. It was warning. And she had learned, too late, too many times, that when a child stops speaking but keeps watching, it means they're the only one paying attention. So she listened. The next morning the air over Austin carried a promise of rain, but inside the center the fluorescent lights still hummed with forced cheer. Maye found Sarah in the administrative office, hunched over a spreadsheet of donors and expense codes. The younger woman's professional smile flickered as soon as Maye mentioned the server room. "I noticed some unusual activity near the network cabinet yesterday," Maye began, keeping her tone casual. "Is our system encrypted properly?" Sarah's fingers kept typing. "Oh, absolutely. Jacob brought in a top-tier cloud vendor last quarter. End-to-end encryption, redundant firewalls, the whole alphabet soup. We're leagues ahead of any other non-profit." Maye waited. She heard the synthetic enthusiasm but not the resonance of understanding. "Could you walk me through the security diagram? Just so I can reassure some of the veterans. They worry about their medical files." Sarah's reply came too quickly. "I'd love to, but the technical architecture is proprietary. The vendor's policy, you know." She shut the laptop with a soft click that sounded like a door closing between them. "Tell the vets their data is safer than at the Pentagon," she added with a laugh that skimmed the surface of sincerity. Maye thanked her and walked out, the phrase proprietary echoing behind her like a locked gate. She didn't head to the cafeteria. Instead, she followed the narrow hall that led to the unused classrooms where the center stored outdated computers and holiday decorations. Faint electronic chatter tingled in the fluorescent silence, the soft whir of cooling fans, the tick of hard drive spinning. Through a half-open door, she saw Gabriel. He had dragged a plastic chair next to a tower PC with its side panel removed. The monitor displayed a constellation of dots, red, yellow, and green, spread across a schematic of the building. His left hand tapped a sequence on the keyboard. His right held a soldering iron poised above a circuit board scavenged from an old router. The boy looked like a surgeon operating on a patient no one else realized was sick. Maye knocked gently on the door frame. He glanced up, eyes dark and calm, then returned to the screen. "That's quite a map," she said, stepping inside. "What are the red dots?" "Outbound packets," he answered without turning. "Ones that shouldn't exist." She watched lines flicker between the dots like invisible threads. "Where did you learn to build this?" she asked. He shrugged. "It's just code. Faster than talking." She sat on an overturned crate, careful not to crowd his space. "I heard you've been in 2 other foster homes," she said softly. "They kicked me out," he murmured, soldering a joint with steady hands. "Said I kept breaking things. I was only tracing their traffic." Maye swallowed. "And here? Does anyone know what you're doing?" "No one asks," Gabriel said. "They think I'm playing games." He pressed a key and the map expanded, revealing an arrow that leapt beyond the center's walls, across the state line, then over an ocean to a cluster of servers tagged with country codes. "Every night between midnight and 3, he explained, the system uploads encrypted bundles. Pediatric therapy notes, medication logs, PTSD questionnaires. Not just the kids. The veterans too. Someone's buying trauma data." The words sat heavy in the stale air. Maye felt the old instinct to rationalize, to find a benign explanation, crumble against the cold precision on the screen. She forced her voice steady. "Why didn't you tell the staff? Why not show Sarah?" He paused, lowering the soldering iron. "I did. In the last place I lived, I told the director her Wi-Fi was tunneling patient files. She said I was paranoid. The psychiatrist wrote PTSD on my chart, same as on my dad's file after Afghanistan." He tapped the letter P on the keyboard, bringing up a log labeled Kim Family History, and closed it just as quickly. "People think broken soldiers raise broken kids." Maye's throat tightened. She reached into her jacket and unfolded the note he had given her. "Extracting our brains piece by piece." "You meant it literally," she whispered. Gabriel met her gaze for the first time. His voice was flat, factual. "Memories are patterns. Patterns are valuable. Someone decided they owned ours." Outside, a distant clap of thunder rattled the windows. The storm was coming sooner than forecast. Maye folded the paper again, but this time with purpose. She understood now why the sentence had felt clinical. It was a diagnosis, not a metaphor. She rose. "Show me everything," she said. Gabriel's eyes flickered with something like relief, though his face remained composed. He turned the monitor toward her, fingers hovering above the keyboard like a conductor ready to cue an orchestra no one else could hear. For the first time since she began volunteering here, Maye feared the building's walls were listening. The gala was 3 days away, and the center had never looked so polished. White string lights framed the lobby's worn windows, trying to make them forget they were old. Volunteers scrubbed every surface that could be scrubbed, while a local jazz quartet rehearsed in the auditorium, the sound of saxophones spilling down the halls like expensive perfume. It was the annual donor night, and Jacob Stellan, philanthropist, tech magnate, and beloved benefactor, was headlining. Maye stood by the supply closet sorting tablecloths when Jacob appeared, his tailored jacket untouched by lint or time. He smiled as if the room belonged to him, which in many ways it did. "You holding up all right?" he asked, offering a paper cup of tea. They always call in the old guards for these events. She accepted it with a nod. "We'll manage." "Nervous?" He chuckled. "I've closed IPOs with more pressure. But you," he tilted his head, eyes narrowing just slightly, "try not to stress too much this week. It's easy to read things into shadows that aren't really there." Maye held his gaze. I prefer lights to shadows. Jacob sipped his tea, then added softly, just don't do anything that makes people question why you're here. We've worked too hard to build trust. You know how fast perception unravels. Before she could reply, he walked away, humming along to the music as if nothing had passed between them. That night, long after the last staffer had clocked out, May returned to the center. She had memorized the maintenance schedule. The server room would be unoccupied between 10 and midnight. The hallway lights flickered, motion censored, as she made her way to the back. Her hands shook slightly as she slipped a borrowed key into the cabinet lock. The machine inside was warm. She pulled out the portable drive Jacob had insisted be added to backup emergency logs. It was labeled innocently enough, but the moment she connected it to Gabriel's laptop, red markers lit up across the network map. Unscheduled transfers. Routing anomalies. Off-site replication. She stared at the screen, stunned, when a voice behind her broke the silence. I didn't think you'd need to see it for yourself. Jacob's tone was calm. Not angry. Not surprised. May turned, heart hammering. He stood just outside the doorway, hands in his pockets. You're not the first to go digging, May. But digging has consequences. He smiled, almost apologetic. A few people who used to work here, they left. Quietly. Don't be one of them. He stepped back and disappeared down the hall before she could speak. The next morning, Sarah cornered her in the kitchen, voice low but urgent. Whatever's going on between you and Jacob, don't drag it into this week. We need the funding. We need his reputation. If he pulls out, we lose everything. May wiped her hands on a dish towel, her voice barely above a whisper. Sarah, have you ever asked where the data goes? Sarah hesitated, eyes flickering. It's encrypted. It's anonymized. And it pays for every sleeping bag and pill bottle in this place. So it's a trade, May said. Pain for survival. Don't be naive, Sarah snapped, then softened. You're not new to how the world works. We save what we can. Later that afternoon, May found Gabriel in the rec room, seated cross-legged beside an unplugged printer, dismantling its panel. His fingers moved mechanically. His face was blank. We don't have to do it, he said quietly. The gala. The file drop. I thought maybe we could make them stop by showing them, but now I think I was wrong. I don't want to make it worse for you. May crouched beside him. You're scared, she said. He nodded. So am I, she added. He looked up. But if I don't believe you, Gabriel, if I don't stand beside you, who will? He stared at her for a moment, then placed a small device into her hand. It looked like a USB stick, but heavier. He didn't explain what it did, and she didn't ask. That evening, the lights on the marquee outside flickered to life, casting a warm glow over the sidewalk. Guests would arrive in 3 days. Cameras would flash. Speeches would be made. Smiles would be expected. But somewhere inside the system, between trust and betrayal, a quiet boy and an older woman were building something else entirely. A plan. A choice. And maybe, a reckoning. The auditorium pulsed with warm light and polite applause. The gala had begun with predictable rhythm, trays of hors d'oeuvres, soft jazz from the stage, donors nodding to one another in carefully tailored suits. A banner across the room read "Together for Tomorrow," flanked by smiling photos of children, veterans, and community leaders. Beneath it, May stood near the back wall, her hands steady, her heart anything but. Gabriel was nowhere in sight. That was the plan. On stage, Jacob looked every bit the visionary philanthropist. His dark suit was immaculate, his voice smooth, familiar. He had just finished thanking the corporate sponsors when he stepped toward the center of the stage, gesturing to the massive LED screen behind him. And now, he said, let's take a moment to celebrate the real heroes, those who trust us with their healing. The screen flickered to life. At first, it showed smiling faces, montages of therapy sessions, group hikes, and cooking classes. The audience murmured with appreciation. May could feel the tension coil tighter inside her chest. Jacob continued. We are proud to say our model has not only helped veterans and children thrive, it has become a national blueprint. The room applauded. Cameras flashed. Then the screen froze. Static. A glitch. Jacob glanced back, confused. A few chuckles rippled through the room. Then everything changed. The screen shifted to black. A red grid appeared. Small blinking dots lit up over a floor plan of the center. Then over a city map. Then a world map. Lines connected the dots, thin, glowing threads reaching across continents. And then, a child's voice, calm, unhurried, and terribly clear. If you're seeing this, it means someone is selling memories. Our memories. A ripple of confusion swept through the room. The voice continued. These dots are us. Children who can't sleep. Soldiers who see ghosts. We gave them our stories. But they were never ours to keep. Jacob stepped forward, his smile gone. Cut the feed, he snapped toward the tech crew. Now. The technician hesitated. Sarah, standing near the control panel, moved quickly, fingers reaching for the power strip. But before she could pull the plug, Maye stepped in front of her. Don't, she said, her voice low but unwavering. Sarah froze. Maye's hand was firm on her wrist. Let them see. Jacob turned, fury simmering beneath his polished exterior. What is this? He barked. Some kind of stunt? Maye moved toward the stage, slowly, deliberately. The voice had stopped now. The map remained on screen, silent, accusing. The boy who warned us, she said, voice echoing through the auditorium, is 9 years old. He tried to tell someone. We didn't listen. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers bloomed like smoke. Maye faced the room. This center was built on trust. But trust without consent is exploitation. These data streams, she pointed to the web of glowing lines, are real. You donated to protect these people, not to package them. Jacob's voice boomed, the mask slipping. You have no idea what you're talking about. Maye looked at him, calmly. Then prove me wrong. Explain where this data goes. Who collects it? Who profits? He stepped back. Someone in the audience raised a phone and began filming. Others followed. A low murmur surged into something heavier. Sarah slowly pulled her hand away from the power cord. Maye stepped to the microphone. She looked at the banner above, Together for Tomorrow, and then at the rows of silent guests. No one's asking you to believe a theory, she said. Just listen to the voice that warned you. The child's voice returned, softer now, a closing line from the recording. I just want the hurting to stop. Even if it means telling on everyone. Then silence. The lights dimmed, not from the program, but from something intangible, an atmosphere shifting. A single clap broke it. Then another. Then a wave of uneasy applause. Not celebratory. Not certain. Just the sound of people realizing they had seen too much to unsee. Jacob stepped down from the stage and disappeared into the hallway. Maye remained still, hands on the podium. She didn't smile. She didn't thank anyone. She simply looked toward the back of the room, where a maintenance door had just clicked shut. Later, in the alley behind the center, Gabriel leaned against the wall, hoodie pulled tight around his face. He looked up when Maye joined him. It worked, he said quietly. Yes, she replied. But it's only started. He nodded. She held the small device in her hand, the same one he had given her. The backup. The real one. The one still filled with proof. Tomorrow, the headlines would call it a breach. A betrayal. A scandal. But Maye knew better. It was a beginning. And someone had finally listened. The headlines the next morning were merciless. Local news anchors stood outside the center with microphones trembling slightly in the wind. One image dominated every screen, the data map from the gala, frozen mid-transmission. Jacob Stellan had been taken into federal custody before dawn. Not with handcuffs or sirens, just 2 unmarked sedans, quiet as paper cuts. Maye sat in the small conference room beside the cafeteria, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold long before her hands stopped shaking. Sarah hadn't returned any of her messages. The board had issued a vague statement about ongoing investigations and respecting due process. But behind the carefully worded silence, something had cracked. And the sound was spreading. Gabriel sat across from her, knees drawn to his chest, eyes fixed on the grain of the wood table. "It's my fault," he said quietly. "I dragged you into this. I thought I was helping." Maye looked up, her voice soft but clear. "Gabriel, you didn't drag me. You opened the door." He shook his head. "I should have left it alone. I should have kept my head down. I didn't know it would go this far." She hesitated, then set the cup down and folded her hands, the way she used to when speaking to students who needed more truth than comfort. "I need to tell you something," she said. He looked at her, wary but listening. "In 1974, I was your age. I lived in Regina, Saskatchewan. My father was unemployed. My mother clipped coupons from cereal boxes. One day, a man from the University of Toronto came to our school and said they were offering scholarships for exceptional young women interested in nutrition." She paused. "They took us to a lab. It had white tiles and buzzing lights. They scanned our bones, measured our limbs, hooked wires to our heads and said they were tracking brain activity under sugar exposure. I didn't ask questions. I felt lucky, important, seen." Gabriel didn't move, but his eyes were wider now. "It took me years," she said, "to realize we weren't students. We were data points. They weren't teaching us, they were measuring us. No one ever told our parents what the tests were for. We never saw the reports. But I remember the way they smiled when we obeyed. And how they said it was for science." Her voice cracked slightly. "I spent my whole adult life trying to fix broken systems. I thought if I stayed close enough to power, I could steer it better. But sometimes, you don't see you're inside the machine until someone outside tells you where the wires lead." Gabriel stared at her. "So no," she said, "you didn't drag me. You woke me up." For a long moment, there was only the sound of wind rattling the thin windows. Then Gabriel stood and walked around the table. He wrapped his arms around her waist and buried his head against her side. She placed a hand on the back of his neck, her fingers trembling as they brushed his hair. Neither of them cried. There were no tears left for this kind of truth, only the quiet ache of recognition. Outside, the reports were coming in faster. Neuroline Foundation had quietly acquired infrastructure in over 20 trauma centers across the country. Shelters, youth camps, veteran recovery facilities. Every place that claimed to help the wounded had unknowingly been feeding the same beast. The data wasn't just sold, it was engineered. Patterns were Monetized. Predictive behavior tools had been created not to heal, but to manipulate. PTSD wasn't treated. It was tracked, and modeled, and turned into currency. Gabriel pulled away and looked at her. "What do we do now?" Maye inhaled slowly. "We tell the rest of the story," she said. He nodded. "And we don't stop telling it. Not until the people who built this system know that we know exactly what they've taken." Gabriel's hands clenched slightly. "And what we're taking back," he said. She smiled, but there was steel beneath it. "Not what we're taking back," she corrected. "Who?" The sky had turned overcast again, the kind of grey that dulled everything beneath it. Maye sat alone in her small office, surrounded by half-packed boxes and a printout of her new contract from Denver. The offer had come quickly, consulting with a National Trauma Recovery Initiative, working alongside senators and scientists. It was everything she had once imagined she wanted: policy, power, distance. She looked out the window and saw Gabriel walking along the edge of the lot, hands buried in his hoodie, eyes down. He hadn't said much since the news broke about Neuroline's national reach. He hadn't said anything, in fact, since she told him she might be leaving. Later that evening, he avoided dinner, then slipped into the supply closet near the server room. She found him there, sitting on an overturned paint bucket, unscrewing the panel of an old modem with too much force. "You okay?" she asked. He didn't look up. Just muttered, "You should take the job. You're good at that kind of thing." Maye leaned against the doorframe. "Gabriel, I haven't decided anything yet." He laughed under his breath, a brittle sound. "Yes, you have. They always decide. My mom decided." The state decided. The foster people decided. Everyone has a plan, until they get a better one. She stepped closer. This isn't about plans. This is about you and me. He snapped the modem casing shut. No, this is about you doing what people like you do. Leaving. That stung more than she'd expected. She lowered herself onto a crate across from him. You think I'll just disappear, she said. He didn't answer. She studied him, then said softly, I've been many things in my life. A model. A scientist. A speaker. But I've never been someone's reason to stay. Not really. She took a breath. I was about to send my acceptance tonight. He turned his head slightly, still not meeting her eyes. But I didn't, she said. I closed the form. I clicked delete. And I filled out something else instead. Now he looked at her. His expression unreadable. An emergency guardianship request, she said. His jaw tensed. Why? Her voice was quiet, steady. Because I believe in you. Not as a cause. Not as a case. As a person. And because you shouldn't have to keep proving you deserve to be chosen. The silence that followed wasn't hollow. It was full. Dense. Then he whispered, My mom left me with her name on a clipboard. I remember the clipboard more than her face. Maye's throat tightened. You'll never be a line item to me, she said. She reached out, gently touching his sleeve. For a long time, neither of them moved. The next morning, Maye arrived at the center to find a letter on her desk. It bore the seal of the Department of Veterans Affairs. Inside was a single sheet. Pursuant to Article 7 Emergency Guardian Provisions, temporary custody is granted to Maye Musk for the care of Gabriel Kim, minor child of deceased Marine Corps Sergeant Daniel Kim. It was signed, dated, and below the formal paragraph, a handwritten line had been added. No child of a soldier should grow up with no one who believes them. Maye folded the letter carefully, then pressed it to her chest. Outside her window, Gabriel sat under the oak tree, laptop in his lap, quietly coding. He didn't look up when she stepped outside. But when she sat down beside him, close enough that their knees nearly touched, he didn't move away. She said nothing. Neither did he. Sometimes, love is loud. And sometimes, it's just staying. A year later, the campus of MIT buzzed with quiet anticipation. The auditorium lights dimmed as the final slide flicked onto the projector. A boy with a grey hoodie and a clear voice stood at the center of the stage, his name stitched onto the bottom corner of the title screen. The Gabriel Protocol. Gabriel cleared his throat. His hands were steady now. His voice had lost the tremble it once carried. He began. It's not just about stopping leaks, he said. It's about recognizing patterns before they become harm. About trusting silence enough to question what it hides. Behind him, the screen showed a simple interface. A red alert when data moved outside an approved network. A yellow flag for anomalies in frequency. A green seal when everything was safe. The audience of academics, coders, and policy leaders watched intently. But Gabriel didn't speak in code. He spoke like a kid who had once been invisible. Who had been watched, tagged, ignored. And who had decided no one else should grow up like that. He finished without flourish. Just a nod and a line. We don't need more eyes on us. We need more ears beside us. The applause was quiet at first. Then it rose, wave after wave. But Gabriel didn't smile for the clapping. He only looked out toward the second row, where Maye sat with her hands folded over her knees, and gave her a single glance that said more than any bow ever could. After the presentation, Maye sat in the small cafe near the quad. She was sipping tea when her phone buzzed with a message. An email. The subject line read, Your boy helped mine. She opened it. The body of the message was short. A woman from West Virginia. A single mom. She wrote about how she had seen an alert on the app, something about a new memory enhancement trial offered at her son's school. She asked questions. She dug deeper. She found out the program had roots in the same network Gabriel had once exposed. She wrote, Because of that little red square, my son is still mine. He sleeps at home. He isn't wired to a chair in some clinic with a clipboard. You didn't just protect your boy. You protected mine too. Maye smiled, then laughed softly. A quiet, full laugh. She closed the phone and looked out the window. Later that evening, they returned to the Austin Center. It looked different now. Brighter. New signs. A larger garden. But the same oak tree still stood in the back, and Gabriel sat beneath it again, typing. She joined him. You know, she said, someone called you a hero today. He shrugged, eyes still on the screen. I'm not, he said. I'm just loud now. She tilted her head. You were never quiet. You just weren't heard. He looked up, thoughtful. It wasn't about yelling louder, he said. It was about finding someone who'd stop talking long enough to hear me. Maye smiled. Her hand reached over and rested gently on his. The world teaches us to see things, she said. Charts. Graphs. Results. But truth doesn't always show up like that. Sometimes, it just whispers in a hallway, waiting for someone to pause. He nodded. And what do we do with truth like that? We guard it, she said. And we pass it forward. As the sun dipped behind the center, casting soft gold on the gravel path, a group of new volunteers walked by. One of them paused, watching the pair under the tree, then kept going. Just a moment. But one that would stay. A story had been planted here. And it was growing. Before they left, Maye turned to the empty courtyard and said it once. Not loud. Just enough. Children know. She turned again at the door. Children know. And as the lights inside flickered on and the wind rustled through the branches of the old oak, she said it one final time. They just need someone to listen.